Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Time the Whovians United. Today, we've got another Doctor Who Classic season review. This time, it is season 8. As always, we have a special guest, but this time, it's again like in season 7. We have got EMS. How you doing?
Hello, thank you. I'm doing really well. I'm really looking forward to doing this. I am quite a big John Pertwee fan, which I think is why you got me on to do season 7 and season 8. And I thought, why not? Let's chat about some of my favourite stories. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to having another chat about this season as well.
Gotta say, what an honour and what a pleasure it is to invite you onto 2 reviews in a row.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
You did brilliant on the first one, so I thought, why not get you on again and obviously talk about another great John Pertwee season, because they're all great, aren't they?
Well, exactly. I wouldn't say there's any particularly bad ones. I'd have a ranking, but they're all pretty good, I'd say.
So then, okay, so that's something Elliot then. Overall, season 8. What are your overall thoughts for season 8?
So season 8 kind of as a season is one that I very much enjoy. I wouldn't say it quite tops season 7. I'd always say that season 7 is probably one of my favourite seasons of Classic Who. But I feel like season 8 is where, well, we have one of the most significant moments in the show in some ways, which is the introduction of the Master for the first time, and then he obviously gets utilised across the series, and I think that was quite a big moment for the show to introduce that kind of arch nemesis, arch villain, along with a new companion in Joe Grant as well. I wouldn't necessarily say the stories sort of are as strong again as season 7 either, but there are some real classic ones in there, like the demons, Terror of the Autons to an extent, the Mind of Evil as well. I think there's some really, really strong ones in there, and it's just kind of Doctor Who trying to kind of figure out more and more innovative ideas to kind of work with the whole we're trapped on Earth. There's 2 stories, which is an alien invasion or a mad scientist plot. How can we then come up with a few different ones? And so I sort of like the kind of exploration of that and trying to, you've got one that features the actual devil in the demons. They do go out into space and colony in space, of course, which was partially because they just didn't want the limitations of having to have it all Earth based, so they went that way. But I'd say overall it is a pretty enjoyable sort of series, and I kind of like it feels, compared to a lot of Classic Who seasons, quite sort of interconnected, because you've got a lot of the recurring characters of Sergeant Benton. You get Captain Yates introduced into this one as well. You've obviously got the Master in every single story, the Brigadier. There's sort of that real kind of sense of continuity in the stories, a bit more so than a lot of Classic Who, and I kind of like the sort of concluding nature of it in the Demons as well, with the Master kind of getting captured and that sort of storyline being wrapped up almost. So I think, although it's not as overtly a story arc as, say, if for Classic Who, like the Key to Time arc was, or Trial of a Time Lord, this still feels quite like there's a sort of constant theme running through the series, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I've got to agree, to be honest. So season 8, yeah, you can't beat season 7, can you? As we said in
Yes.
in the season 7 review, it's my favourite season of Doctor Who, favorite season of Pertwee in general. So it's very hard to beat season 7, of course. Season 8, yeah, not quite hitting the highs of season 7, but still I find it quite fun and quite creative, because, as you said, they decided to put the Doctor on Earth, and they've now need to put seasons with him on Earth, pretty much grounded, and they've got to come up with some creative and different ideas to keep the show going, to make it as engaging as possible, despite there going to be a lack of that space travel. And I do think they've done pretty well. I think at the best of times, they've been quite creative. They've been quite different. They've tried to introduce new things and try to play well with the fact that the Doctor is stranded on Earth. And what I find really good about season 8, of course, is the fact they've used UNIT really, really well. Like, UNIT is in almost every story, pretty much, and the way they're used in every story is really great. And they live up to their reputation, and how they're handled is brilliant. And I'll talk about them later on. But yeah, overall, I find it quite fun, quite creative. I like how UNIT is quite a centre point, throughout the whole series. Season, because obviously as we go through, there is less and less of UNIT as we get towards the end. So this is a really big season for UNIT, as well as the Master, of course. And when I'm not too sure at the current time what I'm going to title this, but would it be worth putting Masterful in the title? I don't know yet.
I mean, it's an obvious joke to make, so I feel like you should try and find a way to fit
full
in.
Of the Master, and there's Masterful out now, and I don't know. We'll see anyway. We'll see. So then, the Doctor, the best Doctor, the third Doctor. What do you think to him in season 8?
Yeah, so the Doctor, I feel like I don't want to say he's necessarily mellowing out in this series, because I think the tone of season 7 in particular is very kind of dark and serious, and all the stories are very, very serious. But then I wouldn't say that season 8 suddenly goes the other way and becomes all, comedy or anything, because you think of Terror of the Autons and men getting sucked into chairs and stuff like that. And so I think, it's and then the Mind of Evil's a pretty dark story in general, and they've got the actual devil in the demons. So I wouldn't say it's suddenly become a light show, but I feel like that what John Pertwee's Doctor gets the sort of great opportunity of playing against a great villain in Roger Delgado's Master. I certainly would say that Roger Delgado is one of my favourite Masters, and I think the chemistry those two have got sort of playing off each other is so fantastic, and I think it almost helps John kind of elevate his performance sometimes. I think in terms of a lot of the scenes we see between the two of them are just some of the most compelling scenes in Doctor Who. And I think, some of those early scenes we see them in Terror of the Autons, sort of the Doctor getting warned by that mysterious random Time Lord who turns up and walks on in the sky and stuff. And we just start to learn a little bit more about his planet and his people through having the Master there. And I think that's a really nice sort of device to explore his character that little bit more. And I feel like kind of we're still obviously going through the whole Doctor is a bit frustrated that he can't leave Earth and he's constantly trying to find a way to leave Earth. But he's also, I think also to some extent, he's getting a little bit more settled into the environment that he's in and kind of getting to know the people. There's obviously the dynamic between him and Jo is quite interesting to kind of create and explore there as well. But I feel like through this season, he kind of, as much as he does still absolutely want to leave and go sort of leave Earth and get his TARDIS back and whatever, he's kind of gradually becoming more and more kind of accepting of the fact he's there and isn't just at every opportunity trying to run away, even if sometimes he does that. So I feel like that's the nice little sort of adjustment to his character that's kind of sort of worked throughout his era, really, until the Three Doctors when he gets his communion circuit back properly. So yeah, I do very much enjoy him in this season. I think that it's a sort of continuation of what we saw in his first season, and very much sort of heading in the right direction with that character development.
Yeah, for me, obviously, he's my favourite Doctor of all time, of course, and
yes,
I love him for many reasons, which I can't just help talk about, and there will be a point we'll have to go. I've said enough in previous reviews. I will not say anymore. But yes, I just love how he's very similar to season 7. He still has no respect for government officials, and he will not let them get in his way. Out the way, sir! Get out of my way! I have no pass. I don't need a pass, And he will just walk through anybody because he needs to save the day. It's his job. He doesn't care who's going to try and stop him. He doesn't care how powerful you are, who you are. He's going to save the day, and that's just what I love about John Pertwee. He has that urgency. He has that mindset that I don't care who you are. I'm saving the day. Now it's very, as you said, it's very interesting to see his dynamic with Jo, because at the start, it wasn't the best, of course. It wasn't at the best of starts, He wanted somebody who was, so maybe possibly intelligent or knowledgeable, or could stand there and tell him how great he was and hold his test tubes. But, they didn't have the greatest of starts, did they? And it's lovely to see that he warmed to it throughout, and obviously we know in the future seasons they get on a lot more. But that start was an interesting dynamic, because we've not really seen much of that, where the Doctor kind of clashes with the companion in the beginning, much like William Hartnell did with Ian Chesterton. It's like it's just a different thing, and it's just really cool to see how the Doctor doesn't always have to get on with the companions, but eventually he does, because they grow on him, and as you said, he starts to learn to live with the fact that he's on Earth. He's not going to go anywhere. He tries to escape whenever he can, or not on any opportunity, and he always tries to play it off. Oh no, I wasn't going. I was just messing about. I wasn't trying to escape at all. But he got used to that life on Earth, of course, and with UNIT. As you said, he has a great dynamic with the Master. It was great to see, those parallels and those differences that he has. You've now got a different character that is from the same world that he is, and you get to see those similarities and those differences, and they play off each other. And I think the fact that Roger Delgado was like pretty much best friend to John Pertwee just made it work so well, because they knew each other. They was great friends, and those two to play off each other was just brilliant to see. And I've got to say, this season, I think it's probably brought out my favourite line by the Third Doctor. So much so, I'm now having it in my Twitter handle. It's got ham-fisted bun vendor.
Yes, of course. What a classic.
Ham-fisted bun vendor, whatever that means. I absolutely love it. So
It's great.
yes, it's great. So characters there. We'll talk. You got Joe Grant. Obviously, we're stuck with you in it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, as you say, the main characters are Joe and the kind of unit recurring cast of Brigadier Sergeant Benton, Mike Yates, and well, the Master, but he obviously comes under the villains category, so I'll save him for later. But I think Joe is kind of the companion that Doctor Who needed a bit more so than, or they realised that's the sort of companion that works better than what Liz did. As much as I enjoyed Liz as a character a lot in season 7, I can understand why they didn't feel like there was enough of a real sort of character the audience can identify with because of the intelligence of Liz. And that's not to say that the audience are unintelligent, but just that it works better and it makes for a more interesting dynamic between the two of them when you've got Joe, who doesn't really understand any of the sciencey stuff and is asking the sort of questions that the audience is. And I know that kind of comes back to the fairly, I guess, basic role of a companion, certainly in classic Doctor Who. But I think that's what the show needed, kind of going forwards with the sort of Doctor that we have in John Pertwee's Doctor. And I love their dynamic. It developed a lot throughout the 3 seasons they spent together. But I feel like right from the off, you kind of it takes a little while for the Doctor to kind of, warm to Joe and accept that he actually needs somebody to be around him to as they say, pass in the test tubes and tell him how great he is. I think the quote is, which is a great line, and kind of is, for that period of the show, a definition of what the companion needed to be in many ways. Not whether that's a good thing or not is not the matter, but I think that's what worked best as a companion for Doctor Who. And so I think Katie Manning is just such a kind of warm presence on screen at all times. She's such a fun and likable character who you can really just sort of relate to, I think, and that's what makes her such a likable character, I think, and just one that so many people are such a great fan of. Certainly Joe is one of my favourite companions from the classic series, and I think that she always tries to kind of go that extra mile and go and get herself into scrapes and into danger. She doesn't just always obviously follow the Doctor. She's always, going getting hypnotized in her first episode in Terror of the Autons. She's willing to sacrifice herself in the Demons to Azol to save the Doctor, I think it is, at one point. And it's just all these different scrapes that she gets into that just sort of shows that really she's got quite a lot of kind of strength and willpower as well, among other things, that she wants to, do as much as she can, be as helpful as she can, and be there and save and help the Doctor when she sort of gets the opportunity as well. So I think that's a really great to watch and explore in this first season and across the next 2 seasons as well. And then with the other unit regulars, of course, we've got the Brigadier. The Brigadier is always a great character. I wouldn't say there's anything specifically new about his character in this season all that much. I think he just continues to be always a great character to have around, a great sort of part of the unit family and the Doctor Who team of this time. And I always enjoy any scenes that he's in. Obviously, he has his iconic moment in the Demons with the chat with the wings, 5 rounds rapid, which is just an iconic line. I don't think that's one of those, or just one of those, in Doctor Who. But I feel like that's probably the most memorable thing about him in season 8. Not that he's not a memorable character, but just that there's not anything else particularly significant in this season. And the same can probably be said for Sergeant Benton to an extent. I think he gets more of a role than maybe he did in season 7 because he only came in sort of halfway through, whereas he's kind of more of a significant part of each of these stories, except for Colony in Space, in season 8. And he's always just a really fun character. He's always kind of having to be that military figure, but there's just that hint of kind of cheek in him as well, which I really, really enjoy, that he's always trying to, get away with little tiny things that he probably shouldn't because he's a military soldier person, and just trying to sort of, do little things. I love those little moments that we get with him. And then finally, there's Mike Yates, of course, Captain Yates, who's introduced in this season as a kind of love interest to Joe, I guess, at points, but it's never really fully explored, and then kind of comes to end. It's sort of just sort of hinted at points, but obviously never comes to fruition ultimately. But he's also a very much an enjoyable character. Again, another one of those, just I think it just gives that kind of feeling of we're really a part of this world when we're watching it, and it doesn't feel like what a lot of classic Who does, where from one story to the next it feels like you're in a completely different setting, nothing sort of connected to anything. By having these continuing characters throughout the season, I think it just creates a much more connected feel to the whole season and the whole sort of experience of watching the show, and something I really enjoy, and just seeing those little things that the kind of characters develop into. I mean, probably Mike Yates gets more development later on down the line when he goes off the rails a little bit in Invasion of the Dinosaurs and Planet of the Spiders and things like that. But at this earlier stage, he's just another one of these sort of enjoyable and entertaining sort of military people who always kind of has a little bit of a joke here and there, or might disagree with the Brigadier sometimes on things and things like that, but obviously has to ultimately fall in line and follow. So I would say I thoroughly enjoy all the kind of regular characters in this season. I think they're what kind of makes this era as enjoyable and special as it is, because you've got those those great characters played by great actors who you just really could always find something fun and enjoyable about in each story.
Yeah, absolutely agree. You know, Joe Grant for me is my favorite companion to the Third Doctor. Yeah, obviously, Liz Shaw is quite underrated, of course. She's brilliant. Sarah Jane's probably she has a good start with the Third Doctor, but maybe not as much of a. I just as much of I don't think she has enough time with him. Obviously she gels with the Fourth Doctor quite well, and she spends more time with the Fourth Doctor. But yeah, Jo Grant, absolutely lovely young girl. I find how she's quite inquisitive. She likes to ask questions. She likes to find out, and she's very much like that. You know, she's a reflection of the audience. She asks questions that we're thinking, and despite not being experienced, she's happy to throw herself in there, getting into situations. Ask those questions, trying to figure things out because she wants to prove herself. Obviously, at the start, the Doctor wasn't really kind to her, and I think obviously she kind of knew that, and she wanted to try to prove to the Doctor that actually, yeah, I might not be as intelligent, I might not be scientific, I might not know anything about anything that you do, but she's willing to try and prove herself, make herself worthy to be part of the team, and obviously she grows on the Doctor, and they grow a brilliant friendship as the seasons go by. Unit, obviously, heavily involved, and they do their job being that military force. They've got that presence. They're always on the scene. They're there sorting things out, instead of the Autons, they're there shooting at the Autons. In Mind of Evil, they're storming that castle, they're breaking into that castle and sorting things out.
Yeah.
In the Demons, they're there. We've got the helicopter trying to break into Devil's End, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And they're there. They've got that presence. They're trying to get the job done. Because I feel like later on, in later seasons, when they're not really there, they are present in some stories, but it's kind of more mopped up by the Doctor in a way. So they are there and they are on the scene and doing things, but it's more the Doctor that kind of sorts things out. Whereas here, it's a bit of both. For example, like in the Mind of Evil, Unit, they storm the castle, and it's the Doctor that sorts out the Keller machine, of course, and he sorts it all out. But they're all there together in partnership. They work together. Whereas later on, even though they are there, it's more the Doctor that kind of continues and sorts things out. But yeah, great. They live up to what their name is, and they do their job well, to be fair. And you get some quite good action scenes, like I said, the gunfight and storming the castle and things like that. Some really great scenes with Unit. You get the brilliant, obviously, you get Benson, who's great, who gets more development as it goes along. Same with Mike Yates. Mike Yates is introduced. They say he was there in Spearhead from Space. He was there at the time, but we never saw him, of course. They kind of linked him to the first season. So it's great to see Mike Yates, a great little duo of characters to help build that ever-growing family. It just makes it feel like a family. You've got the Brigadier, you've got the Doctor, you've got Jo Grant, you've got Benton, you've got Yates. It's a nice little tight-knit family that does everything together, and they all work well. They all have fun with each other, and it just makes it work so well. And it just helps, because when they're grounded on Earth and the stories are predominantly on Earth and nowhere else, it just makes it so more enjoyable, because you can see the whole cast are enjoying it and they're doing the best they can to make the stories the best that they can. So as we said, with it being Earth based, grounded on Earth, they had to be more creative with the villains. So what do you think of the villains in this season, then, Elliot?
Yeah, so in terms of villains, I mean, I think the main one we have to talk about first is, of course, Roger Delgado's Master.
How could you not?
He is clearly the number one thing that anybody's going to remember about. If anybody who kind of knows a bit about Classic Who and you say Season 8, you think the Master and Roger Delgado. Because we, of course, we meet him at the very beginning of the first episode, Terror of the Autons, where he turns up in the circus and hypnotizes somebody instantly. You have that iconic piece of music, the Master's theme that Dudley Simpson put together for back then. It's just brilliant and fits so perfectly. And then, of course, he becomes at least kind of half of the one of the main villains of every single story in this season. They took the rather bold, and I think maybe in retrospect incorrect decision of introducing him as the villain to every single story he turns up early on in The Mind of Evil, then halfway through, I think it's earlier in Claws of Axos, then halfway through Colony in Space, and the beginning of the Demons. So he's very much the guy behind it all, and he's kind of the definition of the kind of more suave, sinister master, rather than maybe you think of somebody like John Sim, who I would describe as the kind of crazy maniacal master, maybe. I would look at Roger Delgado as a much more kind of calm, totally evil and sinister character, but a very sort of suave and always kind of just almost brushing his moustache and trying to sort of think and consider the solutions, trying to sort of win people over with charm rather than with madness, and just sort of just destroying people. Obviously he does do a lot of that, but he kind of uses his charm to kind of get into positions of power and do things and stuff. And I would say he's my favourite master. I've always loved his portrayal, just the such kind of serious, sinister evil that he has within him as a character is just so brilliant. And I mean, it's kind of hilarious the way that he gets towards the end of the final episode of every story, something goes wrong, and then he just is like, wait, I need to get out of here, like at the end of Terror of the Autons, for example, because he always backs these plans with various different aliens that obviously never work out, and the last minute he's like, oh no, this was a terrible idea, it's not going to work out, I'd better get out of here really quick. And then always somehow he escapes until obviously the demons at the end of the series. He always just runs out at the last minute or something. So it's kind of funny in some ways, I guess, but we can forgive that little maybe lack of logic in some of his plots and schemes. You think eventually he'd learn that trying to take over the Earth just doesn't really work, or sort of partnering with all these different aliens. So, but yeah, the Master, he's a wonderful character. I love him. I do enjoy, as much as I don't think it was necessarily the right decision, I do enjoy seeing him turn up in every story. I mean, by kind of Colony in Space, you're a bit like, really? Is he turning up again? He's the villain again? I mean, come on. It gets a bit much by then, but I still enjoy that, and I think that he always elevates any stories that he's in, and as I mentioned earlier, the scenes between him and the Doctor in particular are always cracking to watch. So that's probably the Master. We've obviously got the Autons in Terror of the Autons. I like the kind of more different types of Autons, and the more of an exploration of the use of plastic and sort of living plastic, in terms of just little things like the phone cord that tries to strangle the Doctor, the chair that sucks a person in because it folds in, the really creepy sort of I don't know what you'd really call them, the people handing out the flowers, going around on the bus and stuff. They're really creepy. I've always thought that they're always just a bit of a creepy influence, and the troll doll as well. So just kind of exploring a bit more, rather than just the actual sort of Auton shop window dummy style stuff that we got in Spirit from Space, which is great. I like the idea of exploring all these different other ways that plastic can be used in a living way to kind of cause harm and kill people and things like that. So I think that's that. As much as I don't think Terror of the Autons is as strong a story overall as Spearhead, I do really enjoy that aspect of it and just exploring those different things. Then The Mind of Evil is I guess about the Keller machine. Well, that's kind of the machine that is killing people, and obviously putting loads of sort of angry thoughts and nightmares into their heads and stuff like that. But I don't really feel like there's that much more of a strong villain in there. Maybe I'm forgetting, but I feel like the Master is kind of the kind of main influence in that story. So maybe you can mention a bit more about that in a minute. But that's pretty that's it for The Mind of Evil. Then the Claws of Axos, of course, has the Axons themselves, who turn up with their Axonite, wanting to seemingly do a nice thing for the Earth or the UK, but then wants to ultimately take over the world, as is always the way with aliens. And the Master's trying to kind of help them out with all of that. And I think that probably visually you'd say the Axons are some of the best. The initial Axons, not the kind of stringy creatures that look also like the Crinoid that were repainted for the Crinoid. I don't think they look as good, but the original Axons, I've always think they've got some of the best costumes for Classic Who. I really think they look spectacular. They look very believable in many ways, and I've already really, really appreciated that sort of in them as the aliens of that story. So I wouldn't say that they're one of the greatest aliens ever in Doctor Who, but I just think visually it's a very good appearance there. Then Colony in Space. You've got I can't actually remember his name. Is it Euaxarius or something? What's the name of the little tiny dude who's kind of the villain but not?
Definitely begins to be you. You are on the right lines. I
can't fully remember. But he's. I mean, I think again his costume's quite good, but ultimately he's not really the villain. Again, it's much more about the Master turning up, being the adjudicator, and being the villain when it's kind of a dispute between two different groups of humanoid people in Earth, in sort of colonies in the future. So I mean, I think Colony in Space would generally be described as one of the most sort of the more bland maybe Doctor Who stories, and doesn't really have a visually appealing kind of monster in many ways. You've got those creatures. I can't actually remember what they're called. The ones that are kind of out in that are working for whoever the main guys. I've completely forgotten their names.
No idea.
Yeah, I can't remember, but their costumes aren't actually that bad, to be fair. I don't mind them as much, but they're kind of quite sort of savage creatures from what I remember in many ways. A sort of primitive part of a
Yeah.
primitive city, I guess you'd say, really. So yeah, there's probably less to say about the kind of alien threat of that story. But then you've got the demons, of course, with the Master raising Azal, the literal devil, from wherever he comes from, or was it from like Demnos or something? I can't remember where they were. Where he was from.
Demnos, yeah,
Something like that, wasn't it? Yes, I thought so. Yeah, and obviously they had to use CSO because they wanted to make it look really big, and so you can tell it's CSO. But I think the actual costume and the performance that Stephen Thorne, who plays Azal, and Stephen Thorne, who would go on to play Omega among other characters, of course, I thought that was a fantastic performance, and you really believe in him as this really evil, potentially devil-like creature. I think that works really well, and I think it's probably also Roger Delgado's best story of the season as well in the Demons. His performance, sort of playing this kind of Satan, it's sort of almost Satanist, summoning using black magic to summon the devil and stuff like that. I think it's all really, really good stuff that he gets to use there. I think he really must have really enjoyed sort of putting on that performance, and I think it really, really shows in such a strong performance throughout that story. So yeah, I think there is, as always in the season, the Master is going to be the dominant force when it comes to villains, but I do think there are some strong ones in there. As I say, the exploration of different plastics and with the Autons, the visual appearance of the Axons, and the devil himself in the Demons as well. So yeah, quite strong all round, I would say.
I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 because I might as well focus on my favourites. Of course, you've already talked plenty about the Master, but I just love how obviously devious, relentless he is. That no matter how many times that his plans failed, so he's back again with a new plan, with a new alien to use, and he's always back again. He's happy to try to start again with a new plan, and he'll do what he keeps going and going to try and defeat the Doctor, because that's all he ever wants, is just to try to ruin his life. I love how evil and manipulative he is, despite always seeming quite calm and quite. He always seems quite reasonable. It's so strange seeing him always in positions of power, and everybody just believes him. And they always, and apart from the odd people who kind of suss him out, of course, but he always seems quite a reasonable person, and they trust him, and that's just the energy that he has, that hypnotic energy that makes people believe that he's an honest person, and is who he says he is, and how he can just change people and get on his side. And he does it so calm. Like I say, it's not like Sim, who's mad and maniacal. He's very calm. He's very measured. He thinks things through, and he doesn't really panic at all. He does it with such a calm energy, and it goes like he's so confident as well. He struts his stuff, and he's so confident, and and every single time, whenever anybody says something that he doesn't agree with, he just brushes it off and just ridicules them a little bit, and just gets, and I love when people are breaking through that hypnotism, and he just, for example, I think it's in Terror of the Autons, he'll just take his glasses off. And you just know when he takes those glasses off, he knows, what's coming, and he just goes to them, "You will obey me." And it's like, all right, yes, all right, yeah, okay. And he really means it. His delivery, Roger Delgado's delivery of his lines are so great. Yeah. It's so great. And my favorite thing, to be honest, is, as we know, every single story, he always turns up in some form of power or position, and every time you just go, "No, it's the Master." Well, obviously it's him, isn't it? But how on earth did he so often get into these positions? It's just so. He's just, every single time he always turns up in some kind of position to get to where he wants to be, and we always know that he's the Master, and it's just, you show it on the screen, it's the Master, guys. Why it's so obvious it's the Master. He called himself Colonel Masters, for God's sake. How can you not know it's the Master?
I know, it's ridiculous.
He always plays on his name. He always plays on the word Master on his names, and people never realise till it's too late. The Autons, you said the Autons, definitely different design to Spirit from Space. He was a bit more adventurous, had different uses for it, and obviously the chair, the cable, the phone cable, and then those whatever you want to call them, the people handing out the flowers was really cool, really creepy. And I love how they explored a bit more. Rather than going through, like you said, the shop window dummies, they kind of expanded a bit more and went for different things to try and expand that threat. Because obviously plastics is everywhere. It's not just shop window dummies. So it just shows that
indeed.
you just don't know what is an auto and what's not an auto. And it makes you so anxious because you have no idea what it could be. And it just makes it so, unsuspecting. Like, the guy comes in to fix the phone wire. And what do you know? The doctor's not getting strangled by a phone cable. You wouldn't expect it. And that makes it so. It just makes it so great. You just would not expect it. And then I'll go the axons. As you said, the axons are in their typical. I don't know which form is there. I think the first form they appear in is really well designed. I really do like how it is created, how it is designed. Of course, the second form is very much like the crinoid, of course. But I love how they were designed. I love how cunning they were and manipulative. How they appeared to be nice and offering, a gift, of course, and wanted to help out the world. And obviously, that wasn't their plan at all. They wanted to invade, and how they just turn on them once obviously the plan's in full in motion. And I just love that. Yeah, I just love that how they even had some control of the Master, of course, because the Master turns up in their ship and he's captured by them. So it's great to see for once the Master's not fully in control. So obviously he was captured, of course, and then by the end, the Master goes off in his own ways and does what he wants to do, of course. But it's just, I like the axons. They're very, very iconic to me. Actually, I will mention, you didn't mention Bok. Chapel Wings.
Yes, of course.
Bok.
Yes.
Interesting, isn't it? Bok's just a gargoyle of sorts that can move, and that's the iconic sticking out of the tongue, of course.
Yes,
of course.
I love it.
Without Bok, you wouldn't have that iconic line. Chapel Wings.
Indeed.
5 rounds rapid, of course. So yeah, Bok was interesting. Little creepy presence within the story, because I can't. When does is it like part 2? Is it end of part 2 where he properly summons Azal? Is it like part 3? Is it like part 3 we actually officially see him, don't we? But we see Bok a lot earlier on.
I think we see Bok at the end of episode 1 and start of episode 2. I think when the Doctor So when they go inside the place that they're digging up, and then it all comes crumbling down. I think Bok's there at the time.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so he's that little mini threat that you're thinking, what is he? What hell's he doing? What's he about? And obviously, then Azal gets resurrected, of course, and then he appears. So yeah, I've got to say, also the Master's a highlight. You can't say he's not, because he is. He's in every single story, and Roger Delgado is just phenomenal. The best Master of all time. You can't deny that, of course. You can't.
I agree.
Maybe overused, but to be fair, he is what it is. It's the Master that makes this season what it is, because without him, it would be very, very different, of course.
Indeed.
Very, very different. So we'll move on to the stories. So ranking your stories from 5 to 1. Give a rating if you want, and give a few words about why you would give it that rating. Feel free to say where this season ranks overall in your ranking if you want.
Sure.
Go for it.
Thanks to the powers of sitting in my computer, I have my magical spreadsheet, because I'm that sad Doctor Who fan who has a spreadsheet where they rank all their episodes.
I am also the same.
So I'm looking at this spreadsheet right now where I've got the my episode ratings from the last time I watched them, which was about a year or so ago. So I will base my ordering on that, because I feel like it's the most accurate representation of it. So in 5th place, the bottom of the season, which I gave 7.3 out of 10, reasonably high, I guess, is Colony in Space. I think most people would say this is probably the weakest story of the season. It's just the most. It's kind of the pinnacle of Doctor Who in a quarry. It feels like it more than any other story. The majority of it is set literally in a quarry, which is meant to be an alien planet, and it's not bad, but it is just kind of the original Doctor Who quarry in some ways, I think. And so, just as a plot, it's not the most exciting of stories. I think it was nice of them to go off world for the first time, but I wouldn't say it's the most thrilling of stories, so that's why it's down the bottom of the list. Then after that, we have Claws of Axos at number 4, which I feel like is kind of one of the more just. They sound. In the Third Doctor era, there's a lot of alien invasion, Earth-based stories, things like that. You've got classic ones like Spirit from Space, Inferno's parallel universe invasion story and things like that. But I just feel like the Claws of Axos is kind of, it's good, it's solid, it's fine, but it's just kind of one of the more run-of-the-mill unit era stories that kind of gets forgotten in some ways, apart from the sort of iconography of gold and aliens. I think apart from that, there's just not that much that's really memorable about it, or something that I'm really going to rush to and jump to as a story. So that's pretty why it would go a little bit lower. It's by no means a bad story, as I say. There are some good moments in there. I enjoy the Master in it as always, but I don't think it's one of my sort of, top favourite ones that I always would go back and watch a lot. So that's that one. Then at third place, I would put Terror of the Autons, which I think I've watched it a few times not that long ago, and I've always just found it just something about it doesn't quite click right for me. Just doesn't quite keep my interest and attention that well. It's good. Like, there's some really good stuff in there. The introduction of the Master is great. I love that. And there's some interesting stuff with, as I mentioned, the different types of plastics and exploring the Autons and the introduction of Joe Grant. There's a lot of aspects in there that are really good. But I just feel like as a plot and as a story, it kind of falls a little bit short of what we saw from Spear from Space in the previous season. I would still very much always go to that story first ahead of Terror. As enjoyable as it is in places. And I do sort of like, the final conclusion with all the people giving out flowers turning up in the bus, and then the Master seemingly driving the bus away, and, just all the little reveals there and the drama of it all and everything, and then him realising it's all going to go wrong as well. There's some good moments there, but I just think as a whole story, it's not one of my absolute favourites. It's a good story. I very much do enjoy it, just not sort of top of the season. So then two more, of course, we've got The Mind of Evil and the Demons. I put The Mind of Evil at number 2. It's one of those one of the sort of Earth-based unit stories that I've always really, really enjoyed since I first watched it. I think about 7 or 8 years ago now, when they first colorized the episode. It's always been a story, just the kind of, I feel like an interesting setting of having it sort of in this prison, and just that's a sort of very dark area that Doctor Who so rarely explores. I mean, I know the Doctor gets locked up in space prisons and whatever, but to see the sort of prison that we see in The Mind of Evil, I think is quite a surprise in some ways. And then just the opportunity for scale and different aspects and plot lines throughout this story is crazy. Like, you go from this whole stuff with the Keller machine in the prison, and then you've got the Master transporting this doomsday weapon, or the unit transporting this doomsday weapon or something, this massive missile. There's the UN peace conference. There's so much going on in that story, and so many sort of plot lines that cross over through the 6 episodes that I think is fantastic. And it's a really strong story for the Master. I always just have that iconic image of him sitting in the back of the black car with the cigar in his hand, listening to the little radio and stuff, and it just sort of is the epitome of his Master and the evil of his character for me. I've always loved that. So that's definitely one of my favourite stories. But number 2 of the season, of course, behind the Demons, which I'm sure most people would put at the top of this season. The Demons is just kind of, I think, everything coming together in a unit story, really. This is sort of this era at its absolute best, in terms of you've got the whole unit family in there, involved heavily in the story. A really great idea behind it of exploring this mysterious sort of the black magic of it and the devil and things like that. The sort of the brilliant setting and location filming, having it all done at Aldbourne, and what is sort of deemed Devil's End, and just the whole the Master in it is brilliant. I think the Doctor's great in that story as well. The kind of wrapping up of the season by the end of it with capturing the Master at the end is great. So just overall, it creates such a strong story for me, and I think I'd definitely rate that as the top of the season. So I think overall I would probably put that as my sort of maybe second, maybe third favourite season of Jon Pertwee era. Season 7 would definitely be number 1, then it'd be a close run thing between season 8 and season 10, I think, is my sort of second and third for the Jon Pertwee era. But even across the whole of Classic Who, I would definitely put it in my top sort of, I guess, out of 26, maybe my top 7 or 8 I would probably fit into if I sort of actually thought about it and did a real ranking. So yeah, very much one of the stronger series that seasons that feels like it's got some real high points in the Demons and the Mind of Evil, solid stories like Terror of the Autons, and even the sort of lesser good ones, Colony in Space, are not bad by any means. So a very solid season.
Okay, so I am in some places quite similar, in some quite not. Okay. I'm not going to say it's going to be a controversial choice, my number 1, because I know there's other people I've seen recently on Twitter actually talk about how good this story is, of course, but I'll get to that. But I'm somewhere kind of similar to you, and like you, I have my own spreadsheet I can refer to, of course, which is you can have you just can't not have a spreadsheet if you're a Doctor Who fan. You've got to have a spreadsheet. You've got to have one.
Right, oh yeah, of course.
Of course. So at number 5, I have got Colony in Space. Yeah. And I give that a 7 out of 10. So yeah, it's not particularly interesting, of course, but the inclusion of the Master, I suppose, just improves it. I feel, because obviously, it is the Master, and him being involved in turning up just kind of turns the story a little bit more. At the beginning, it's kind of a bit not, it's just a bit not interesting, a little bit boring. It's kind of just very bland. But then with the master turning up and then kind of changing the story a bit more, that's where it gets a bit better. But it doesn't really get any more than a 7 from me. In at number 4 is actually The Man of Evil. Give that a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Now, great political thriller. Great political thriller. Lots of politics involved. Lots of things going off, as you said. And the highlight for me is unit storming the castle.
Oh, it's brilliant.
It's just to me. Have you ever seen Takeshi's Castle?
I've seen a little bit of it, yes.
With Craig Charles and that phrase, storming the castle, it just feels like that to
Yes.
me. Yeah. And they kind of do it like a bit like they kind of do it a bit like the Trojan horse, don't they? Because they come in back of a van.
Oh,
and they all sneak in, and then they storm it from the inside. Of course, that's really cool. And I love how great they use their intelligence to infiltrate the castle and take it over and storm it. Of course, and as you said, there's loads of things going on. You've got the Kelly machine inside. You've got the peace conference going off outside and everything. And you've got the missile, of course, and then the master's just there, sat by the side, kind of pulling strings everywhere. So brilliant. Number 3 is The Demons. I give it a 10 out of 10.
Ooh.
Intriguing, captivating. I've got to say that first part for me was probably one of the best episodes of Doctor Who, ever. Part number 1. Yeah. It sets the scene so well. It sets Devil's End up so well. It sets up the mystery and the intrigue of what's going off and how weird things are in that town it makes you want to know more and keeps yourself engaged for the later parts. You've got obviously Unit, of course, and you get the Master being arrested at the end, and obviously you've got Buck and Azal, which is really good. However, my number 1 and 2 I feel are a bit better, and I think you're starting to figure out where things might go with this. So number 2, Terror of the Autons. Now, I feel like it's very close to Spearhead from Space, but Spearhead from Space is the better story, of course. It currently is my favourite story of John Pertwee. So Terror of the Autons, as we said, it did different things. It had extensions, obviously, with the types of plastic and the different things it could use to try and be deadly. It has the introduction of the Master. However, it's not as good as Spearhead from Space. It is definitely my favourite of the 2. However, this is still really good, and I feel like it's just brilliant. It is brilliant. It is the perfect introduction to the Master, and the end scene with them shooting down the plastic men, the Master escaping, of course, and engineering his escape, and they think they've got him. They think they've got the Master, and of course it's not him. He's off somewhere else. He's gone, and I love that. So, which means in at number 1, which I feel is very, very underrated, is The Claws of Axos. I find it very fun, very engaging. I love the music, to be honest. I love the music in this. It's got some really, really good music. And it's 4 parts, so it's not very long. It's a very, very good, high engaging story. The story itself, with the Axons manipulating Unit and trying to get on their side and make them believe they're here for a good reason. They're trying to help out the Earth, and then obviously it turns out they're not. They're evil. They're trying to take over. The Master is obviously captured. He's got his own little motives, and he's trying to escape as well. The Doctor also himself learns a lesson. He had a lot of things he was thinking at the start, and he was actually proven wrong. To have a few apologies about about how he acted in the beginning. And obviously the Doctor tried to escape again and he failed, of course. He tried his best, but he failed this time as well. So for me, it is my number 1 story in season 8. And current standings. This is very hard to do current standings because I'm in real time and well in advance. Well in advance. So let's just figure out. So current standings 1, 2. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So current standings, season 8 is my 3rd favourite season. behind season 7 and season 5. That's current standings. That will change as I go along. I can tell you that that whole ranking will change as we go along. But current standings, season 8 is number 3. I think the average is 9.2 out of 10. Apparently, the average
very high,
very high. I know. That's how my stories, my seasons tend to be quite high rated.
I mean, yeah, I would like with my spreadsheet. I don't think I've rated a story below 6 out of 10. So I guess it kind of flaws my idea a little bit of having rankings. But
this is the thing, you see. Yes, I am very generous sometimes when it comes.
Yes.
If I really think they deserve a 10, like in season 7, I gave them all 10s. I will give them 10s. Now the lowest I've given so far is a 1 to the Space Pirates.
I mean, I don't blame you.
Of course, but within the Pertwee era, I can tell you now that I don't think a story gets below a 7. I don't think a story will get below a 7 for the Pertwee era.
Probably the only one for me would be the Mutants.
Ooh, interesting one.
Which I just found a bit boring. But anyway, I'm sure that's for somebody else to talk about in another video.
Of course, yes. You will hear Davis's thoughts on the Mutants. You will.
Very good. I'll look forward to it. I'll look forward to that.
Okay, so there we go, guys. That was our review of season 8. Now, what's your thoughts? Put them down in the comment section below. What's your favourite stories? What do you think of the season overall? Let us know down in the comments. And I'll say a nice big thank you once again to Elliot EMS for appearing on this series. Thank you very much for being here. You've been great.
Thank you for having me. It's been great fun to talk about this couple of Doctor Who seasons.
I believe you're not down for another, are you? Is that right? Or am I wrong in saying that?
Not currently. I'd happy to come back and talk about any season, quite frankly.
Any season of Core.
Just let me know.
If a space does happen to open up, I will be happy to bring you on back again, because it's been quite fun having you 2 in a row. So if you've not seen Ellie's channel EMS, go and check out now. Subscribe to it. It's a great Doctor Who channel. Great things on there. Your reaction videos with Megan, quite good, to be honest.
Thank you. Glad to hear it. Yeah, they're probably the biggest thing going on the channel at the moment. But I'm looking to do more Classic Who stuff this year, among other things as well. So do check it out.
Yeah. So if you've not seen, because I know a lot of people do reaction videos on their own, and it's great to have somebody else who.
Exactly.
Am I right in saying Meg's not seen Doctor Who? Before obviously reacting to.
Exactly. Yeah, she'd never seen any of Doctor Who, so every single reaction we're doing is to episodes she's never seen before. I've obviously seen them, but for her it's genuine. So it's great fun.
Type of reaction videos when you get into those, of course. And EMS, he also appeared on one of our reviews of season 12, of series 12, of course.
Yep, we did. Yeah, way back when, the Timeless Children. What a time it was!
That was a fun time. That was a fun time.
Oh yes.
Yeah. If you've not seen that video, go and watch that one as well. If you like this video, give it a nice big like, but most importantly, subscribe to keep up to date with our latest videos. We've got loads of plans planned, big things coming up in the next couple of months, so subscribe to keep up to date. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. We shall see you next time. See ya.
Bye-bye.